Get started. Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Joining me on the line, Scott Nugent, who is the founder of Trey Voices. And Scott, thanks so much for joining me. I had to have you on. I saw you in What is a Woman? Matt Walsh interviewing you, and
hmm
we have been playing the clip here, and I played the clip of you in What is a Woman? And I wanted to just really start out with your story and how that kind of played out and how you were approached by Matt Walsh and your answer, because you are a and I want to be respectful, a
I am, yes.
trans man. So
hmm
tell me a little bit about your story and that interview you had with Matt Walsh in that documentary.
Well, sure. When I was 42, I was a business sales executive. I sold telecommunications and fairly successful. But I was in a relationship with a woman who was just convinced that I was a man in a woman's body, kind of a thing. And she joked about it for years and years. But then, Jazz Jennings started coming up, all this, transgender stuff. And I had thought about that before in my life. Just kind of briefly thought, wow, if I was born male, my life would be way easier with who I am and my personality, my strong personality, and so forth. But I came to kind of a vulnerable place, let's just say, and kind of questioning myself, the whole social contagion. I'm like, maybe I was born in the wrong body. And I made an appointment with a transgender woman therapist. And within 5 minutes, she looked at me and just said, well, how long have you been dressing like a man? And I remember that actually stopped me in my track. It actually mortified me because I thought at that moment, at 42 years old, I had gone my whole life walking past people, and people, were just whispering like, "Oh yeah, that's Kelly. That's a dude. She doesn't know it," kind of a thing. I mean, I felt stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ever saw me before I medically transitioned, there's no way that you would think that I was male. I mean, I was a business sales executive. I wore makeup and had the blonde bob and all that kind of stuff. But somehow, becoming vulnerable at that place, that transgender woman, and then I went to a doctor the next week that asked me if I'd ever been tested for intersex because I had a really strong jaw or something. I mean, just stupid stuff. And at 42, I was like sucked in. And so after that experience, I kind of started to go through excitement. Like, I don't fit in. I'm a lesbian. I don't fit in. I never fit in. So maybe this is the reason. And so I kind of grabbed a hold of that. But during that process, in the next 3.5, 4 years, what people don't realize is the medicalization of human beings, period, is 99% experimental. In fact, WPATH, which is the baseline for care for transgender health care, has never held up in a court of law anywhere in the world as a solid foundation. So the truth is that it's all experimental, but you can't find that online. And I did when I started to do the bottom surgery. After that surgery, the gentleman used the wrong side of the skin, created hair on the inside of my urethra. I had 17 months of a reoccurring infection. I had a pulmonary embolism, a heart attack, sepsis. I was sick for 17 months, lost my house, my car, my wife, everything. And I found out real quick, going from ER to ER, that nobody knows what to do with this because it's experimental. And the person that I wrote a check to for $250,000 without, any of the complications that I had wouldn't help me because I'd lost all my insurance. And realizing that I only have one or two surgeons in the world that can help me, and this kind of really holds this in, all these mistakes. And so it was probably about 3 weeks before they figured out what was wrong with me. And I remember being in my apartment, and I had passed out from pain, and I had enormous pain. I would work Monday through Friday, and then Friday I would go in the hospital and check myself in the hospital until Sunday. They wouldn't want me to leave because my infections would never be cured. I had like an IV in my arm. I had to get it every day before work. I mean, it was horrible. And one morning I just woke up in my own urine and blood, and I just realized that I'm dying. Not like kind of dying, like I'm dying. And people can't figure out why I have this infection. And it was at that moment that I just had a, kind of like a release, like, thank God all of this is going to be gone, all this pain. And in that process, I thought of my 3 kids. And I just went from, I'm glad I'm dying to, nope, I'm not going to die. And so I made a promise at that time that I would do everything that I could to out the fact that transgender health is experimental. During the process, during getting on Twitter and all those social media, I realized what they were doing to children. So then my focus was, the promise that I made. I'm here. They figured out what my infection was. So now I'm just fulfilling that promise that I made.
Well, let me start with how are you feeling today? And is your health back to at least, and I don't know if that will ever be where it used to be, but how are you feeling today? Are you still dealing with some sort of damage?
Yes, I have. I have congestive heart failure. I have lung damage from the pulmonary embolism and the heart attack. I also have a reoccurring infection still. The infections are still, longer out. I haven't been on IV antibiotics, but eventually the infection will kill me when the antibiotics, and nobody knows what that time is. So I've cut a significant amount of time off of my life. I mean, me being able to meet my grandchildren, probably not going to happen. So it's a serious thing. It's an absolute serious thing. And here's the thing, is that my experience is not one that is uncommon.
Really?
I know many people that get infections like this. But again, we're talking about what? We're talking about something that's dripped with the idea that it's human rights. Anybody says anything negative, all of a sudden they're a bigot. Nobody can talk about it, number one. Number two, it is absolutely and completely, utterly experimental, 99% of it. Hormones, synthetic hormones, puberty blockers, all the surgeries except for top surgery. So we have all these doctors that are going to states like, Texas that has a tort reform act, which means that if you want to bring a medical malpractice case, one of the first things the judge is going to say is, okay, where's the baseline for this procedure that you believe that they didn't do a right job?
There is no baseline.
There is no baseline. And then the judge looks at him and says, well, create that baseline. And then the attorney goes, well, I don't have $10 million to create that baseline. On top of, if I do that, I'm going to get attacked by all the transgender and ACLU people. I'm going to lose all my, people. I'm going to spend $20 million to get what, $100,000, $200,000 for this person. So I mean, the total evilness of this is so deep. It's evil.
And you bring up Texas, and that's kind of where I wanted to start, because I had reached out to Scott, and Scott, we reached out with each other, and you were telling me about Governor Greg Abbott. And I tried to do a little bit of digging, and you're right. And it's amazing that there wasn't a news story about this, and I saw like a kind of a blip about it. And I thought that was weird because I saw the blip, but it wasn't it wasn't even negative about Greg Abbott, and he actually was taking millions from this Southwestern gender clinic fed through UT Medical Center. So tell me a little bit about your research on Governor Greg Abbott actually, and we all know Governor J.B. Pritzker is a part of this techno-medical complex, and he's doing this experimental thing on kids as well as his cousin, Jennifer Pritzker. But I want to talk about Greg Abbott, because you hear Greg Abbott and then you're like, wait a second, he's a Republican. I thought Republicans were against this sort of thing. And it turns out he's taken millions.
Yeah, let me go further with Greg Abbott. Just a couple of months ago, basically came out with a press conference and said that the medicalization of children, basically transing children, is child abuse. And so he's actually even come out against the medicalization of children. So here's the total truth all the way around it. Now, you have to keep in mind that I was never political before this, never watched news. I was a salesperson that was totally tunnel vision, never watched news. In fact, my ex-wife used to, tell me, you need to watch news, you need to do this. And my answer would be, listen, if I'm watching the news, it's because I'm shaking the earth with something. So I have nothing to gain from this, only the truth. And what I realized is that Greg Abbott is doing what a lot of politicians is doing. I just caught him, which is this. He's taken, since 2015, $2.5 million from a gender clinic. one of the biggest gender clinics in the Southwest. In 2015, Texas had 22 children that were on puberty blockers. If we take that profit, not how much they make or their profit, but how much that generated, that'd be about $1 million that those 24 kids would have clicked on every year.
Being that they're on these medications like puberty blockers. So
yeah, like puberty blockers.
In total, these 24 kids, they're essentially cash cows, and they're bringing in a lot of money because they're on these medications, these puberty blockers, right?
Sure, but that was 2015. That was $1 million in a year. So that's when he started taking the money, is 2015. Well, let's fast forward to 2017. During that time, there was a 4,000% increase. So that 22 children that were on puberty blockers now jumped to 400. So we went from generating $1 million in 2 years, which would be what, $2 million, to actually generating $20 million a year by 2018. That was $60 million in 3 years. That started at $1 million in 2015. So what people don't realize is that puberty blockers, Lupron, first of all, it's 8 times more profitable when a doctor writes a prescription to children than to adults.
When you say Lupron, can you explain that a little bit?
Lupron is the maker of the puberty blockers. Lupron is a pharmaceutical company. Now, to give you an idea of who Lupron is, in 2003, this has nothing to do with transing children. Just that company in itself was sued by the government, the federal government. They lost, and our government deemed this company as a criminal enterprise. So they highlighted this company as a criminal enterprise for false advertising and bribery. This is the company that wrote an $874 million check like it was nothing. And all of a sudden, here they are back up and going, and they're telling us that puberty blockers are reversible. There is nothing wrong with them. What they're not telling people is there's over 10,000 complaints about puberty blockers with precocious kids. They're not telling people that places in Sweden, which is the top country for the medicalization of human beings, basically all the research that we have that has stood up against time has come from Sweden, shut down the medicalization of children completely and totally, calling it the worst medical scandal in modern history. It's causing early onset osteoporosis. It's causing girls not to have their spines form together. There's a documentary in Swedish that I've translated that it's banned here in the United States. But if you saw it, you would see 15-year-olds walking like they're 90, not going to die till they're 30. In Europe, all of this is being shut down left and right, left and right, left and right. But here in the United States, we have people that are making sense like me. I've gotten kicked off of Twitter 4 times. I've gotten kicked off of TikTok 27 times, banned on Facebook 42 times. And I'm not saying anything that's not true. But what's happening is that...
Well, you've lived it.
I've lived it. Too many people on the side that's making money has the ear to people to shut people off. So let's go back to Governor Abbott. So Governor Abbott took $2.5 million. Now,
from
Governor Abbott,
this gender clinic that was making millions off of these 20 some odd kids.
So from a gender clinic, not from the pharmaceutical company. It was a gender clinic, and I don't exactly know where that money, but it was from a medicalization of children, a gender clinic. So now keep in mind that Abbott is an people that don't agree with same-sex marriage, all of a sudden we've made them into the evilest person in the world. I mean, I'm a lesbian. If you don't agree with homosexuality, it doesn't make you a horrible person. And to me, it just means that we don't agree on that. But Abbott was, a proponent of trying to make sure that, same-sex marriage didn't go through. It wasn't a friend to the homosexual community, let's say. But he took that gender money. And in Texas, within that time frame, Texas has turned into the worldwide hub for the medicalization of children. So last year, we had a bill that would have been on the floor, just like the bill that I'm speaking about for Nebraska tomorrow, and the ACLU is doing a live press conference. Now we had a bill just like that And 4 days before that bill was supposed to be voted on, Greg Abbott and his team took an additional $250,000 check and then created basically a campaign to get that bill pushed off of the floor, made some kind of, statement like, we need to just love each other. So remember, he's an anti-LGBTQ, and then he's making it the opportunity to say, hey, we need to just love each other and let people be who they are and all that kind of stuff. He didn't put in there that, hey, I just cashed a $250,000 check. And so he kicked that off. Well, with 27 million phone calls, I'm a tornado. I don't stop. I made a promise to God that I would do this, and I'm going to do this. My kids are tied to it, and I don't think people get it that I'm not going to quit. And I think he got that I wasn't going to quit. So he ran some kind of little study about, the medicalization of children, and he came out and said, hey, the medicalization of children is child abuse. Well, it was child abuse in 2015, you jerk, when you took $2.5 million. So
yeah, you can't sit there and say that you're against it and then also profit from it.
And basically, and look at all, if you pull up his name right now, he will look like he is, the fighter for stopping the medicalization of children. Governor Greg Abbott says that medical transition of children is child abuse. He shut down everything. But the truth is that Abbott hasn't shut down anything. But what he has done is he's created all these articles that he can point to and say, hey, listen, I told you that the medicalization of children is wrong. But that puzzle is not going to get by me. That is, on my opinion, that is as bad of a human being as you can get. And you should not even be leading a conga line if you don't have any morality, even an ounce of morality. That's, I'm sorry, conga line leaders, you don't qualify for that, let alone leading a country or a state or anything.
Exactly. We are going to take a quick break, but Scott, can you stay on for just a little bit? And we're going to talk a little bit more about Governor Greg Abbott and then Governor J.B. Pritzker. And I do want to talk about this Nebraska bill that you had brought up that you're fighting for. So keep it right here at Cities 92.9. Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And before we took the break, we were talking with Scott Newgent, and he is the founder of Trey Voices. Tell us a little bit about Trey Voices. And you can find that, I think it's www.tre.org. Am I correct there, Scott?
You're almost correct. It's TRE Voices, VOICES.org. Yes. Well, I got on Twitter, after I made that, kind of promise to myself, and I started to get better. I made a promise, like I said, I'm waking up in my own urine and blood, and I just said, God, whoever, if somebody can figure out what's wrong with me, I promise that I will let people know that medicalization of human beings is experimental and it's dangerous and all that kind of stuff. I didn't realize I would get here, but I started talking on Twitter, and I realized that, hey, I have kind of a way of helping people understand what's going on top of, having the experience. And
the trans community probably heard your story and it maybe resonated with them because you're not the only one.
No, I'm not, and that's what I found out is that running a trans organization is that, 95% of people actually that have medically transitioned have some form of regret. It is, I wish I would have known how bad it was going to be on my health. It did help me, but I wish I would have known all of it this is the worst decision I ever made in my life. There's some form of regret in there. Unfortunately, people are worried about, losing their community. So when I started, speaking about this, I got a lot of attention from the religious base, and I'm not a Christian. I do believe in God. I do believe there's something. I don't know what it is, but it kind of resonated with that group. But that group couldn't hold me and grab me and say that this person belongs to us because I'm not a Christian. And then the gay community couldn't grab onto me because I medically transitioned, and so I was kind of a traitor there. The trans community, I'm kind of a traitor there. On the liberal side, so I didn't fit in any part of society. But not fitting in any part of society means that I get to tell the truth. And as I was doing that, I was getting, thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. It was nuts. But I got too many, and so I started to get banned from Twitter for no reason. By the way, I got the first ban I got on Twitter was because I was warning parents about what's called queer surgery centers, which are basically centers where if you feel like you're a eunuch, we can cut your penis off and your balls off and, pay us $30,000 and go on your way because that's human rights. And so I started to say, wait a second, what is this? And then all of a sudden I started, dipping into people's pockets. I got, banned off of Twitter 2, 3, 4 times, banned off of Facebook. I mean, it's ridiculous. And on one of my bans, I got a phone call from somebody about doing a documentary. And I do things that kind of hit my heart for some reason. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this documentary, which was what is a woman. But I don't think people realize that the medical trauma that I had kind of induced, well, it didn't kind of, it induced PTSD in me. I hadn't left my house for 3 years. I had been doing all my activism online. But I swore I wasn't going to say no to anything that hit my heart that I felt like I had to do. And so that, for some reason, did. And so I agreed to go to New York to do that interview. It was my first time leaving the house in 3 years. And Matt didn't know that. Nobody knew that in the interview. And, in fact, being who I am, I had no idea who Matt was, even when I was interviewing. I thought he was just, some Jewish dude is what I thought. I had no clue.
Yeah. Well, your story, I mean, it really it shook me and it made me want to reach out to you. I don't know, it was a God thing where it made me want to reach out to you on Instagram because, I mean, I was in tears and I was like, wow, this story needs to be told in this community. It's a college town, and I know I actually kind of lived. I mean, he would come over to our place a lot of the time, and he was trans and a trans man, and he struggled, and you could just see it all over him. With the testosterone and the hormones, had top surgery, was considering bottom surgery, and went through hell, and you could see it all over him. And I never had a conversation with him about it, like a true conversation, and I wish I would have. I really did. But had I known about your organization, I would have pointed him your direction all those years ago, a couple of years ago when I was in college. But I did want to also ask you about just a basic question. Do you regret going through it?
Absolutely. 100%. I would have never done it. But unfortunately, in activism and it's a business, right? So now the new business is detransitioners, which I'm a teller of truth, and the truth is that any female that has been on testosterone more than 18 months has completely changed who they are. They will never be the same. So the whole idea of everybody lifting these detransitioners, the Christians and the feminists and all that kind of stuff, which is fine, but it seems like they all lift the people or the girls that are able to transition back. Unfortunately, they're not showing the truth, which is that if you have a girl that's on testosterone for 3, 4, 5 years, and you tell her that everything's going to be okay if you just transition back, if you just stop taking testosterone, you're going to be better. Just like we tell them when they're 11 or 12 years old, basically. So we have the same-sex attracted, we have the autistic, we have the mentally gifted, we have the mentally ill, we have the abused, we have all those kids that don't truly fit in, but when they get to be about 23, 24 years old, they realize that not fitting in is actually a superpower, and nobody in the world has ever done anything that ever fit in, but it takes that time frame. We steal that from them. We tell them that they can fit in, and then they get to be 19 years old with the only long-term study that tells us that we're medically transitioning these children that are suicidal. The truth is that their suicidal ideation will be the highest, not before they medically transition, but 7 to 10 years after, because it's a long process, right? When I start testosterone, I feel better. Nope. When I get testosterone, I feel better. Nope. So it's always a carrot. Once that carrot's gone, then you'll be suicidal. All 7 studies that said that it was great for kids, it has been retracted or modified. There's only one that sticks that tells us that. So we're telling these children that at 11 you could fit in, and then at 19, when you realize it didn't help, the feminists and the religious people are grabbing these people, lifting up, saying, "See, I was right. They're detransitioning." Spotlight. And then when spotlight goes on, they go down, and then they call me with a gun in their mouth. And it's happened with detransitioners that you guys talk about.
Yeah.
And basically, we're missing the point of what I call being a decent human being. And you have to be honest with these people that if you have medically transitioned, if you've been on testosterone for 5 years, you will never, ever, ever totally look like, sound like a woman. It won't happen. So let's deal with the truth now instead of just making you do something for me, which is to make me right. I want you to make the feminists right. I want you to make the Christians right. Instead of lifting these people as human beings, saying that this person was told a lie, was used, don't do the same thing again with detransition.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I didn't even know that part of it. Nobody talks about the detransitioning really because it's not a fad, but I could see it becoming a fad and having people really take
It is.
advantage of the folks 7, 10 years from now. Who knows who's going to be suicidal and trying to pitch them. And heck, maybe it's the same people who transitioned them that will, start detransitioning them for
Mm-hmm.
the this money. Right. And then
Yep.
it starts to be just the big cash cow from birth to cradle or
Yeah, all the way around.
cradle to grave. It's just like you make them money. It's the techno medical complex.
Yep.
The detransitioning is just as bad. Now, what are you doing with this Nebraska bill to address this? Can you tell us, is it a bill that
Sure. About 4.5 years ago, I worked with a politician, Fred Deutsch. We did a bill to stop the medicalization of children. Fred and I and our team, we had a whole bunch of people on the team. We got like a couple of votes away from getting this passed 4.5 years ago, if you could believe it. And Fred was one of the first people that understood that you cannot, being a conservative Christian Republican, you cannot bring these bills to the front and think that you are going to be able to get to the people on the fence or on the other side. Because as soon as you say Republican Christian and you say LGBTQ, you are of no value. Nobody's going to listen to you except the people that already agree with you, right?
right?
So, we did this bill. He wrote this great bill, and we kind of what I called lifted the rainbow kind of a thing. Because I've always said that you can only fight the rainbow with a rainbow. So for 50 years, we promised, society that we weren't after kids. We were just after, gay rights, marriage, that kind of stuff. We were not after kids. We were not a recruiting agency. Well, lo and behold, guess what? We've turned into a recruiting agency. We've turned into everything we said we weren't going to be. So to fight that rainbow, Fred was one of the only politicians that understood that, hey, we have to lift the rainbow. And so we did that. We didn't get the bill passed. And then there was a woman by the name of Robin Lunsford who got the first bill passed in Arkansas. Absolutely fabulous. I love her to death. Become a really good friend of mine. And now, this year, we have, that I'm doing over a dozen and a half or whatever different bills on top of working full-time still, testifying, helping, strategizing with different states. So giving testimony, finding the detransitioners, working with the senators, that type of stuff. So tomorrow is the bill for Nebraska. Now, they do have the ACLU, which they don't usually do this, but they're doing like a live press conference with the ACLU. And then, of course, what was it that 150 of these trans radicals stormed the Oklahoma Capitol today. So it's coming. It's coming to fruition here. People are starting to understand the truth, and they're not going to have any power anymore because there's no human being that has any type of brain cells that can look at this from an objective point of view and think that the medicalization of kids is about love. You can't do it. It's one of the very few black and white issues, which is there's always usually gray to any answer politically. This is black and white. There's nothing about the medicalization of children that's right. Nothing.
Right. Now, this bill in Nebraska, is it similar to that of Oklahoma, where it says, you can't transition people under the age of, I think it was 26 in Oklahoma? Is this Nebraska bill that you've been working on with, is it a senator?
It's a senator. Yeah, it's Kathleen Koff. It's 19.
Okay.
It's 19. And I think people are trying to do the 25 years because the human brain doesn't fully mature until 25 years. I mean, you cannot see around corners. I tell my kids that, it's, you don't let a 1-year-old around a swimming pool because that 1-year-old doesn't know they jump in and they're going to drown, right? But at 7, you do. So it's kind of seeing around that corner is all we do in parenting. The human brain doesn't fully develop to see around corners. It's not these kids are stupid or there's something wrong with them. It's just a scientific fact. You can't understand the positives and negatives in complete totality until you're 25 years and above.
Yeah, I thought that was a weird number. I was like 26. I wonder if that has to deal with insurance or if it was, your brain doesn't develop until 25. So I was kind of speculating there, and I'm not sure. I haven't read the legislation coming out of Oklahoma. But
Well, yeah, the reason why they do it is this. You want to know the truth? Here's the truth. The medicalization of children, the whole transgender thing, is a craze. We're talking about a mental illness called gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a disconnect from reality, just like anorexia is. So the thing is that everything that we educated society about homosexuality, which is that who you're attracted to doesn't change with therapy. Now you can decide what you want to do with it, but the majority of it we can argue all day long. But the majority of the studies that come out, people don't change who they're attracted to. So that has kind of been drilled in to our society. So the trans community has adopted that, kind of dripped that over themselves. Like, I was born in the wrong body, which is bullshit. Nobody's born in the wrong body. Being transgender is something that you choose. It's a verb. You create it with synthetic hormones and surgery, and by all means, deserves respect and dignity. But it doesn't cure anything. But if you convince people it does, what does it do? Well, it lines the pockets like Governor Abbott with $2.5 million.
Yeah, and like Governor J.B. Pritzker as well, our governor here in the state of Illinois. I mean, the synthetic sex identities and his cousin. It's all about the drugs and pushing this on children because it's money making.
Do you want to know why there is such a push by transgender women to transgender, I'm a real woman? Do you really want to know the truth? Because I think society will be shocked when they find out. You want to know why Pritzker is so obsessed with spending all his money on this whole transgender issue? Do you want to know why?
Why is it?
He wants to make sure that he maintains his erection. There is a sexual fetish that a lot of transgender women have. And that fetish is basically they are only sexually aroused if people think of them as a female. I mean, Google it. Google what you want. It is a lot of most transgender women have this. So if you call a transgender woman who has this sexual fetish by using male pronouns, even though you see it and hear it, you don't mean anything negative by it, it ruins their erection. So all of this, if people really want to know why we're medically transitioning children, it's because males are not wanting to lose their erection. This is about sex all the way around on a big scale, not 100%, but a big percentage of that. So we have a transgender woman who has a lot of money, who can shut people up. Well, I've lost everything. I've got 3 pairs of underwear. She can take 2. All I have is the promise I made to God to be here with my kids, and I can tell the truth. The reason why that person, that transgender woman, is so concerned with this is because it has a sexual fetish, in my opinion. And a lot of people will feel the same way.
Yeah, Jennifer, the cousin, I forget, or James Pritzker was his old name before he transitioned. I don't know if he's gone through any kind of surgeries or anything like that. But for sure, testosterone, and for sure has tried, or not testosterone, estrogen.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I did not know that. I will have to Google that, Scott. But One more thing, I did want to talk about Oklahoma a little bit. What do you think overall about the storming of the Capitol? Are you worried that that's going to happen in Nebraska?
Yes, I haven't even read about it. I've been running all across. It, Matt Walsh's wife told me about that today. I haven't even looked into it, but she was just like, "Here, look at this." And I told you, but I really have. I don't even know what's happening. Isn't it like 150 people in? Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they just went in and I mean, they had blowhorns and things like that. It was just, they went in and it was, I'd imagine a pretty similar bill because your bill that you've been working on, it just says, hey, you can't medically transition children. And, you've been calling it something throughout our chat here, medicalization.
yeah.
I've never heard of that terminology before. Can you kind of explain medicalization just for our listeners here?
Well, we're medicalizing children. It's the medicalization of gender-confused children. I mean, words are important.
Mm,
So we have gender-confused children. If you have a biological boy that thinks that they're a girl, that is that's a disassociation. That is a disassociation from reality. Whether or not that offends you or not is of no regard. It's the truth. Um, so nobody can change genders. Now, here's something that people don't understand is that people that have true gender dysphoria, and gender dysphoria is a bear of a mental illness. It's awful. It's horrible. It is akin to anorexia.
hmm
So it is basically looking in the mirror and seeing something that is not true. So currently, right now, what we're doing to people that have gender dysphoria would be the same health kind of prescription to giving an anorexic girl, a 16-year-old girl, sitting down with the parents and going, okay, your child's anorexic. Here's what I want you to do for him. I want you to take your daughter and stick her in front of the mirror, and I want you to make her say that I'm fat and ugly 100 times a day. Then after that, I want you to take her to a class on the benefits of the starvation of a body and come back and see me in 6 months. What people don't realize is that people with true gender dysphoria that medically transition, those are the people that kill themselves. They don't do well at all because you take that disassociation, you take it from the back of your head to the frontal part of your brain, and it's a focus. So as soon as I walk into the room, oh, did they think that I was a girl or a boy? What did they think? Okay. Oh my God, they misgendered me. And so it's totally on the forefront of these people. The people that do halfway decent with medicalizing or medically transitioning are the ones who understand that it is an illusion. It's cosmetic surgery and less breast, augmentation. We have women running down the road, showing their boobs to everybody, saying that my life is saved because now I have D because I was born with D, except I had A boobs. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's
hmm
cosmetic surgery. The people that do decent are the ones who understand that. The ones that do really bad in those studies are the ones that have true gender dysphoria.
Mm. Yeah, the people who see it as a cosmetic thing, like I want to look a certain way. They do all right with it, but you see the
They do.
suicide and the actual gender dysphoria, and I've used that example multiple times with the anorexic. You wouldn't tell an anorexic girl that she's fat if she's
No.
not, right? And we're doing the equivalent to young children. And Scott, we're getting close to our time here, but real quick, I did want to ask you about Trey Voices. That's
Hmm.
trevoices.org, folks. You're the
Yes.
founder. Can you tell us a little bit about the organization and where we can find you?
Yes, it's trevoices.org. It's an organization that I started. I work with politicians. I work with school systems. I work with doing meetings, making speeches. I work with people like Matt Walsh. Here's what people don't realize is that I'm not paid for that, and I work about 100 hours a week. So anytime anybody can do any kind of donation, it helps me kind of move away from my job a little bit and concentrate on this. Lord knows that somebody needs to. So what Trey Voices is, it is a single note org. I have nothing else on my brain, but stopping the medicalization of children worldwide. Because every child here in the United States is worth it. Every child in the world is worth it. And until those kids are safe, I won't stop.
Mm. And Scott, I know God has a big plan for you, and you're reaching a lot of people. So, Scott, thanks so much for joining me here on Cities 92.9. You have a great rest of your day and safe flight. Have a safe flight.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.